So, this chapter we did chapter 9, and then, this chapter that follows. Um, this chapter is called Vibhuti Yoga, and it is part of a series of chapters now that you will see 10 and 11, very much into the devotional aspect for God. So, in this one, he talks about the glories of Bhagwan, of the Supreme. And it follows a theme you will see in the 11th chapter. If you know high level what the Gita is, chapter 11 is then about, the supreme form, where Sri Krishna takes the universal form, the Virat Roop of Sri Krishna that only Arjun can see. And is there anybody on the phone? Is there somebody on the phone? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, somebody joined on the phone?
Yes, this is Jyotika.
Jyotika, okay. So I'm just summarizing.
Hardly here, I think.
Oh,
Can it get a little bit louder?
okay. Is this better? No. Oh, interesting. Yeah, because I can't really change the volume. I'm not sure how. Yeah. So, so this Vibhuti Yoga chapter, um, it is it is fairly easier, much easier than most of the other chapters. This chapter is much easier to understand. So this chapter is something that you would have to read, because there's about 20 or so verses that cover all the different aspects of creation. So from verse number 22 to verse number, I think it's about 12 chapters. Let me just check 1 second how many verses it is. So it is 22 verses. So if you look from verse number 22 to the next 22 verses, so that's still about verse number 44, Krishnji goes over all the items in the various aspects of creation. Like he'll say, amongst all the stars, I am the sun; amongst all the rivers, I am Ganga; amongst all the trees, I am this and that. And so he's going over all of these things, and that's something that you would have to read, because I won't go over all of those items that he goes over. He goes over 75, about 75 elements of creation. So basically, this chapter is about the manifold manifestation of the Supreme. So obviously you have the Supreme Consciousness, and then you have the creation and how it manifests. So this is about how the consciousness of the Supreme is present in all of these different aspects of creation. Because what Arjun does is he asks him, can you explain to me how you're manifesting? It's very, how you are sort of these moments of inspiration where you're very kindled with devotion, and you ask your God, you ask your Guru, please tell me all your manifestations. And so, being kind to Arjun, Sri Krishna goes over all the varied forms of manifestations that he has. And then in the end, he says, how can I go over all of these things? Because there are too many to mention. There's infinite number of my manifestations, and it's very difficult to go over all of them, right? So the purpose of listing all of these things, you'll wonder why is he listing all of these elements, and he's saying why is he the best amongst the rivers is Ganga, or whatever it is, best amongst all the waters is Varun Devata, and you can go over all of these. But how is he selecting which one he is the best? How is he selecting that, amongst the rivers it is Ganga, or amongst the trees it is this tree, or whatever? How is he selecting amongst all the sounds it is Om, and so forth, right? So, how is it that he's selecting all of these which are the best amongst them? Do you follow me so far? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, he selected certain things and he's comparing it to, and to me it makes sense. It's not like a common thing that he's comparing himself with, but like a buddhi, gnan, and all those things. So to me, it makes a sense that I would expect that label
Yeah,
from.
yeah. So basically, he's saying like amongst all the rivers in the world, he is Ganga. For example, amongst all the mountains in creation, he is Meru. Amongst all the suns, amongst all the Adityas, amongst all the stars, he is the sun, our sun. Amongst all the winds, Maruts, he is Marichi. Um, and he goes on and on like that, right? Amongst all the Vedas, he is Sam Ved. So why did he choose the Sam Ved? Why didn't he choose some other Veda? So the reason is because, and he actually says it towards the end, in verse number 41, he says that whatever is the most glorious, prosperous, or powerful amongst them is the one that he's chosen as an example. Like, for example, he says, amongst the greatest munis, I am Vyas, amongst the greatest siddhas, I am Kapila Rishi. So, why did he choose Kapila Rishi as the greatest siddha? Why did he choose Vyas as the greatest muni? Even though actually the author of the Gita is Vyas. So the reason is that he's choosing, for example, greatest amongst the munis, he's taken Kapila Rishi because he's chosen the most evolved, the highest in that class of his manifestations. So if you think of all these groupings in creation, there's so many groupings of creation, right? Like whether it's a physical thing, like a river or a mountain or a tree, or whether it is a physical thing, like an animal or a human. He's chosen the most evolved, or the highest, or the most glorious, prosperous, and powerful, as he says in verse 41. Or if it's amongst the devas, or like he says, I am Narad amongst all the devas, I am Narad. Why did he choose Narad Muni? He's choosing the best example, the most evolved, the most powerful, the most glorious. So that's how this choice has been made. Okay? So he goes over all of these things to show Arjun how the spirit, how the supreme manifests in this infinitude, in the macrocosm. So this is showing the glory or the expression of spirit. Because see, the spirit, the supreme, the consciousness of Brahman is inert. It is unavailable to everything in its unmanifest form. But when it does manifest, you can think of it as a glorious expansion, a celebration, like a bouquet, a beautiful, wondrous creation that happens. And in order to celebrate it, in order to glorify it, in order to praise it, this chapter is all about praising it. So even in the Rudram, when you have the Namakam and Chamakam, in the Rudra, the chanting, the first part is the namakam. It talks about all these aspects of creation, all of this nama nama. It goes over all of these things. It's basically giving your you bow down, because in Sanatan Dharma all of creation is worshipped. And it's very strange because in Sanatan Dharma, we even bow down to Kali, we bow down to Yama, the god of death. We don't differentiate between death and life. We bow down and we honor both the pleasant and the unpleasant. We bow, we honor the light as well as the darkness, because the underlying principle, the foundation of all that is still God, is still Brahman. Because irrespective of all these different varied expressions, the substratum is still that consciousness. So it is of the higher knowledge, it is of the higher understanding to realize that underneath all of this, everything is permeated by the same consciousness. So that is why, here he mentions Yama also, because we have to realize that it is all a play, and consciousness is pervading all of this, all of these things in creation, whether it's death or life. So it's a beautiful chapter if if you want to meditate on it, if you want to think of the varied forms that the spirit takes and celebrate each of its manifestations. And it is sort of like a stuti, when you sing in praise of God, how you say, you created this beautiful thing and this is so beautiful, and that is. So it is this inspirational moment that you have where you start praising all the virtues of God, all the creations of God, all the providence of God. It is sort of like that. It is a glorious praise of that consciousness that manifests in this huge array of the created, all of these manifestations. So if you take it like that, then you have got the essence of this chapter. So there are two ways to meditate. A lot of people will meditate on the supreme consciousness, the unmanifest form, the transcendental form, which is not available to the senses. Or people would like to praise the divine in the manifest form and give gratitude and glory to his that manifest form, like all the forms of manifestation. This chapter is about meditating on the varied forms of manifestation of that same Supreme. Very similar to the Namakam aspect of Rudram, if I am correct. Now, this is my analogy, but basically it's the same thing. You can meditate on both aspects. So, do you understand that? Maybe you guys are on mute, but that's really what it is. And there's not a lot of meaning in this chapter. There is some meaning, but not like great deep meaning and all. It's basically about the power of lordship of the Lord over all of this, and the pervasiveness, the immanence, the pervasiveness, or the, like, every object that you see, to see the spirit behind it, to see the consciousness behind it. So like if you're sitting and you say, I praise this form of him, I praise this form of him, I praise this form of his. It is like that, it is for those people who want to see the spirit manifest in everything. This is a good chapter to read. So to know that everything is sacred, everything has a divine presence, and to go from that level to the transcendental. So he's basically saying that he's the chief or the prominent factor in all classes of beings, all these classes that he goes over, the 72 or whatever things that he mentions in these 22 verses. And he's also saying that all of these things are sustained by me. nothing would exist without that consciousness principle, right? So he talks about here he talks about the macrocosmic level and also the microcosmic level. So in verse number 7, he will mention that, verse number 6 actually, first he says, neither the devatas nor the rishis know me. That's first thing he says. And then he talks about this is something that I like, but I'll go over it. So in verse number 7, he'll mention the 7 rishis, okay, and he will talk about the 4 kumaras, the 4 mind-born sons of Brahma, and he will talk about the manus. There are 14 manus. And why I'm bringing this up is because unless you know the subtle meaning of this verse, you will never get it. So here he's talking essentially about the macrocosm and the microcosm. So the macrocosm is the greater creation, the universal or the cosmic. So you know how we have a small mind and we have a big mind, right? So he talks about both. So on the macrocosmic level, he's mentioning the 7 rishis. They're also called the Prajapatis. So the 7 great rishis and the 4 ancients. The 4 ancients being the 4 manus, the 4 Brahmakumars. Brahmaji's sons, the 4 of them. So these 7 rishis are mentioned even in the Purans. There are 7 rishis and they have different names, but essentially they are the Sapta rishis or the 7 great rishis. They're also known as the Prajapatis, meaning the fathers of creation, the seeds. The progeny starts from these 7 rishis. So here Adi Shankaracharya and also Swami Chinmayanand, he talks about these 7 rishis as a different classification of them. So he talks about basically one of them being the cosmic mind, meaning what we call in Vedanta as Ishwara, and the second rishi being the ego aspect, the separation, the jeev, the jeev aspect. That's the second, and the other 5 as being the 5 original elements. So these come the source, the causal elements. So these being the source for the macrocosmic level. So let me go over that again. So you'll hear about these rishis many places in our Veds and Purans, but here Swami Chinmayanand and Adi Shankaracharya talk about these 7 rishis from a very different perspective. He says that one of the rishis is the Mahatattva. In Samkhya Yoga, it is known as Mahatattva, but in Vedanta, it is known as Ishwara. Now, I'm getting a little technical here. So, let me back up. Okay, so in Sanatan Dharma, there are 6 schools of philosophy. Okay, there are 6 schools of philosophy. One of them is called Samkhya Yoga. And the principal scholar for Samkhya Yoga is known as Kapila Muni, Kapila Rishi. In that
I'm going to stop you for 1 second. Samkhya Yoga, isn't the chapter 2 Samkhya Yoga too?
Yes, it is called Samkhya Yoga because it follows the same philosophical construct. Samkhya Yoga is all about logic and following logic and analysis. So that's Samkhya Yoga. So because the second chapter's knowledge follows that same philosophical thought, it is called Samkhya Yoga. So Samkhya Yoga is like, if you know what philosophy is, there are different schools of philosophy, right? The Greek philosophy, the Vedantic philosophy, there are many schools of thoughts, right? They follow a uh, particular form of thought, human thought. So in Sanatan Dharma, they have been classified as six schools of thought, six schools of philosophy. One of them is Samkhya Yoga. So if you study the texts of Samkhya Yoga, all the people who belong to that school of thought will use the same terminology. So they will say Mahatattva. In even Sri Ravi Shankar, he refers to, he says both Ishwara and Mahatattva, but more commonly you will hear him saying Mahat Tattva, Mahat, M-A-H-A-T, Mahat Tattva, meaning the collective mind, the cosmic mind. The equivalent to that terminology in Vedantic school of thought is the Ishwara. Ishwara meaning the Lord. Ishwara, Maha Ishwara, or whatever, Parameshwara. Ishwara means the Lord, or the presiding elemental force is called Ishwara, like Maheshwara, Parameshwara. So that Ishwara, Ish, right? Ish means king or lord, correct? So in Vedantic philosophy, Ishvara is the collective mind or the cosmic mind. So in these seven rishis, here it is explained one as the Ishvara or the cosmic mind. The second is identified as the Jeev. So why are these two said? One is the supreme functioning through the macrocosm is Ishvara. The supreme functioning through the individual is called the Jeev. Got it? So one is the macrocosm, one is the microcosm. Macrocosm is Ishvara, microcosm is Jeev, the individual soul. The only difference is Ishvara is not deluded by Maya. Maya does not overrule or delude Ishvara. However, Maya, as ignorance, as agyan, avidya, overrules the Jeev. That is the difference. But in terms of equating, macrocosm is Ishvara, microcosm is Jeev. Understood me so far, right?
Yep.
Maya does not overpower Ishvara. Maya does overpower the Jeev. Okay? So those are the first two rishis that I explained here. Then the other five are the causal elements. You know the five elements, right? Space and all this, right? So the five causal elements. So these seven constitute the macrocosm, the seven rishis. Now the next thing he mentions in verse number 6 is the four ancients, right? The four ancients, yeah. That is the Brahmaputras, the Sanat, Sanatan, Sanandan and Sanat Kumar. These are called mind-born sons of Brahmaji. Okay? So the mind-born sons of Brahmaji are like so what does it mean, mind-born sons? Mind-born sons basically means that they are not physical, they are subtle beings. And there are four aspects of the antakaran. If you remember when we talked about the chart that we went over, Tattvabodh, there are four internal aspects. One is the mind, which is perception, essentially thoughts. That's mind. Then you have intellect, which is buddhi. Then you have chit, which is memory, correct? And the fourth is the ahamkar, right? So there are four aspects of our antakaran. So here they are equating the four aspects of the mind, antakaran, which is called antakaran, meaning the four classifications which is mind, memory, intellect, and ego, are corresponded with the four Brahma Kumar, okay, Kumars, the four Kumars. So I'm just going over this because this is something I really like this aspect. That's why I'm going over it. And then he talks about the Manus. There are 14 Manus. Basically, he's talking about the macrocosmic level and the microcosmic level of the individual, and so he's saying that in both of these, if you understand me, he who knows the truth about these manifold manifestations of my being, the macrocosm, and the yoga power of mine in microcosms, becomes established in the steadfast yoga. So here is where he's mentioning the vibhuti, my vibhuti, meaning wherever he talks about the vibhuti is the macrocosmic level. So he says, whoever knows me such will know my manifest power. Okay. So what is it that you want to get out of this chapter? Again, it is something that is something of devotion and meditation. That is what you need to get out of it. What is the manifold manifestations of that supreme being that he is, and how he manifests in creation, and how that spirit pervades everything. Okay?
Excuse me. So at the microcosm level, it is Ishwara, and macro is Ishwara, and micro is like an individual jeev level, individual soul level.
Yes, that's right.
And so through this vibhuti yoga or divine glories, the Krishna is trying to establish that what are the things he is, kind of. I mean, I didn't get the picture of why he had to describe all these things, that I'm this and I'm that.
I mean, actually, there is no real purpose. The only thing is because, Arjun says, please describe yourself in detail to me. I want to hear. You see, it's like you go to God or you go to your guru and you say, manifest yourself and show yourself your true glory to me. It's more from a devotional aspect, it's not some logical or intellectual aspect, because these chapters are going more into the devotional aspect of it. So that's why he's describing all of this. I mean, he takes the time to go over all of these things with him and tell him, this is my vibhuti. These are my manifestations.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, most of this chapter it's not something I can explain. It's something you have to feel. It's something you can just read, and for your own reference later on. You can read through this and see amongst all these classes, all these different classes that he goes over, the classes of creation that he goes over, what Sri Krishna considers to be the most evolved, the most powerful, the most esteemed, the highest of its class.
Excuse me, one.
Yes?
You said this Sanatan Dharma has 6 schools of thought.
Correct.
And on the other hand, we are talking of Shankaracharya's Advaita philosophy.
Yes. Advait Vedanta.
Advaita.
Advait Vedanta, yes.
Right. So, Sanatan Dharma and Vedanta, they are different in the sense for the sake of philosophy. Are they considered as different, but they work somewhere?
Sorry?
Whether Vedanta philosophy is part and parcel of the Sanatan Dharma, or this is different philosophy, Dvaita, right?
No. It's part of the 6. So basically, there are 6, okay? There's Samkhya Yoga, there is
Right.
Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Purva Mimamsa and Vedanta. So there are 6 of them, and all 6 are part of Sanatan Dharma. And each of them, each of them has certain prominent scholars. So, like for Samkhya Yoga, the prominent scholar or rishi is Kapila Rishi. And amongst Vedant or the Advaita Vedant, just known as Vedant, but Advaita Vedant, in Vedant also, there are many subcategories. But one of the most prominent ones is Adi Shankaracharya. And actually, just to give you a little bit deeper understanding, if you actually look at these 6 schools of thought, they actually are a progression in your own evolution. Because the difference between Samkhya believes in Purusha and Prakriti, the duality, the masculine, feminine. Okay? So and if you go through this Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Purvamimamsa, Samkhya and Vedanta, you will see a maturization or the advancement or the evolution of thought. Actually, I'm giving you a little bit more than it's needed for this chapter, but basically it's how your thinking starts refining till you end up with Advaita.
Right. So Vedanta can be considered as a ultimate evolution of the philosophy, the different schools of thought over a period of time.
It is the ultimate, and that is what you should actually mature to. But if you cannot, you might identify with some other yoga, depending on your level of evolution. Each human being is at a different level of evolution, and they will identify with a different philosophy.
Right. So to start with, depending on your level of understanding and what you can appreciate, all the schools of thought, so to say, are independent, but actually they evolve finally to the Vedanta.
Yes, absolutely. That is why it's called Vedanta. Vedanta.
Vedanta. Okay, kind
Yes.
of. The end. Final.
It is actually, it's not end, it is the culmination.
And I mean toward the final.
Yes, I know what you. But I'm just saying this for the others also, because Vedant, I'm sure you know, but just I want to mention this, is that it is sort of like the culmination of evolution. So Ved means wisdom or knowledge or whatever you might understand it is, but it is the body of knowledge or wisdom, Ved. But the culmination of wisdom, and which is actually finally it is ends in liberation.
Exactly, that's the right word you use, culmination, yeah, of the different philosophy. In I mean, I will just use it, not uncultured.
Correct. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Madhavacharya's propounded Dvaita, and of course then Adi Shankaracharya Advaita.
Yeah, Dvait and Advait. Madhavacharya was Dvaita, Advait.
Right.
Yeah, so there are many sub-classifications, But like Ramanuja's birth is coming up, right, this weekend. Ramanuja is another Advait, but Advait. So, like I actually had a copy of Ramanuja's, what's his name? Another commentary by Ramanuja. Yes, I think it was Ramanuja's commentary on Gita. But you see, if you read Ramanuja's commentary on Gita, I'm sorry, I'm getting very technical, I'm very passionate about this topic.
That is very nice of you, but it's okay because finally it comes to knowing the thing as much as we can.
Correct. No, I'll just tell you what my experience has been. So I was reading, I think it was chapter 13, I think it was. And I was comparing the commentary, and I think it's verse number 12 or something in 13th chapter. I don't remember exactly, where he starts on the different virtues. But I was comparing the commentary of Adi Shankaracharya and Ramanuja. And you will see that actually Adi Shankaracharya's thought is so much, for me, it was much more mature and precise compared to Ramanuja's in the Advait, the Vedantic chapters. So the Vedantic chapters of Gita start from 13 to 18. The last 6 chapters are the Vedanta, the Upanishadic, the knowledge chapters.
Right.
And in the knowledge chapters, I found Adi Shankaracharya's commentary uh, much more to the point, much more evolved than if you read Ramanuja's or anybody else's commentary.
Yeah. No, but that is, I just started beginning about Ramanuja. I am really not sure. I was just figuring out whether he was trying to merge the Dvaita and Advaita. So I'm confused. So I was,
Yeah, he was kind of challenging Advait.
thank you very much. The point you made about Narada, and just you said this chapter covers basically devotion and creation. And Narad Muni is considered the ultimate in the bhakti.
Yeah, he's
That is like,
for Narayan. For Narayan,
no,
he's the best.
Narad Bhakti Sutra. So
Yes.
maybe that is he, Krishna Bhagavan, about his name as the that.
Because he's his greatest devotee.
Sorry, I took you extra time.
Yeah, so he chooses Narad Muni, but I don't know if it's because of that or whatever. But
You just buy it and have nobody to see it.
yeah, so anyway, but he chooses Narad Muni and for other reasons also. But Narad Muni is another topic, It's very interesting because he actually defines thought, because Narad Muni doesn't stay for more than few seconds anywhere. It's just like, your mind doesn't really stay at one place for more than some few seconds. So
But finally, he also said it is a bhakti yoga, whether karma yoga or jnana yoga. Finally, it is devotion only. Merges into devotion. Finally, it is Chandra Bhakta.
I don't think, you can classify it's finally just devotion or just knowledge or something. It's it's different facets. See, even bhakti, gyan, karm, these are all manifestations or different facets of the Supreme. And you cannot have, like, if you have 4 facets, you can't live your whole existence in only one facet. If you want to fully blossom, you have to have all the facets. And it's like a stool with 4 legs. You cannot have a stool with one leg. But you can drag the stool holding any one leg. You can, so you like that one leg which is called bhakti, you can hold that leg and drag the whole stool, but the other 3 legs have to come along. If you're more intellectual, you can drag the leg which is called gyan and drag the stool, but the other 3 have to come along. So, like that, the full knowledge, the full existence, truth, reality, or whatever you call it, is sustained by 4 legs in the Gita's context, not in the Vedas. Vedas is a little different. There's only 2, the Karm Kand and Jnana Kand.
No, I was thinking of that Narad Bhakti Sutra particularly, the how it, of course, little going away, but that is how.
Yeah, Narad Bhakti Sutras is there. There are many manifestations of devotion in many other scriptures, including Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is one of, considered one of the most supreme Purans on bhakti. So that is there. I would say that Bhagavatam would be the top of the list. Narad Bhakti Sutras is also there, but it is a section, only one section of the Bhagavatam, Narad Bhakti Sutras. Have you read the Bhagavatam?
Right, I have.
Yeah. So
I have read. That is the only statement I will make.
okay. Yeah. So Bhakti has many great books.
I have gone through it, but That's a Uddhav Gita. Also.
Yeah, that's the last. That's the 11th book.
The more and more you read, you feel practice better. So certain
Yeah.
areas that is problem.
Bhagavatam also, like this chapter, this chapter is very similar. So, yeah, you've brought up a good point. See, if you read the Bhagavatam, especially like chapter 10, which is the crux, the climax of Bhagavatam, the 10th book, the 10th canto, which includes the life of Sri Krishna and the glories of Sri Krishna. So, all those glories of God, when you celebrate, that is Vibhuti Yoga. That is what it is, the manifold manifestations of the Supreme. That is Vibhuti. It's so beautiful, actually, when you feel that devotion, and when you experience that in some of these verses where Arjun becomes very ecstatic, if you read those verses of Arjun where he's very inspired, he's got the spark of devotion in these few verses. When you get that spark, and you are facing Sri Krishna face to face, this supreme being, and the supreme is speaking through Krishna, and you have direct dialogue with this immense presence that emanates from Sri Krishna. You are so floored, you're so overpowered by this magnetic personality, this immense presence, the beauty, the that I don't know how to say, that love, that unconditional love, the knowledge, everything is there combined in this one being. And then you say, please tell me more about yourself, tell me how you manifest, tell me all your creations, how do you pervade your creation, tell me. And it's such a magnificent moment when Sri Krishna is describing, I am so and so in this, so you have to feel that, when as you read the chapter, you have to feel that kindling of devotion. You have to feel that vibhuti, it is the glory of seeing the Spirit manifest. And when you feel it, everything will seem so divine. Everything will seem so beautiful. Everything will seem, you will see Krishnji everywhere. You will see, oh, this is Krishna, this is Krishna, this is not Krishna, but that supreme, that consciousness, that beauty, that radiance, that living being. Because Sanatan Dharma, we don't see things as objects. We see everything as a being. The earth is a being, the wind is a being, the plants are beings, animals of course are beings, but this whole manifestation is a living being. It is not animate and inanimate, nothing like that. So
I can use only one word at this point and I stop. Anubhuti. Anubhuti, or that moment of realization for maybe that
yes, that's a beautiful word. In fact, it's there, Anubhuti is there in one of the chapters, I don't remember. But Anubhuti is the inner realization, the inner experience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so whether it's of devotion or knowledge, Anubhuti means within you, the experience within you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so it's beautiful. I mean, I I think that this chapter and the next chapter are more about how we understand devotion than the 12th chapter, which is called Bhakti Yoga. But when we read the 12th chapter, you will see it is nothing like the Bhakti Yoga that you know. Because Bhakti Yoga that we think is the praise for the divine, the different forms of love that we feel for the divine, the different expressions of love and devotion, the worship, the stutis, this thing. This chapter, even though it is Sri Krishna himself explaining his manifestations, it is more like a stuti. You know what a stuti is, right? When you praise the divine. And actually there is a mystical saint or whatever you might want to call her. Her name is Meena Om. She is a spiritual master in Delhi, um, and she gave me the spiritual name of Vibhuti. She said, I will give you the name Vibhuti because I love to praise, the uh, write different poems and praise of Sri Krishna. So it's when you write these things, when you're in those inspirational moments, when you write all these things about the Supreme, it's so beautiful. I think we've lost Naina ji.
But the Vibhut,
Yeah. So, yeah, it's very hard to give a commentary on this thing, on this chapter. There's nothing that much to explain. Most of it is he's talking about, all these different classes and all these things. But it's something that you'd have to read. It's easy to understand. It's something we can share, it's the feelings that we can share about the Supreme.
you can please cover the last verse, that अथवा बहु नैतेन किम ज्ञातेन तवार्जुन विष्टभ्याहमिदं कृतस्य मे काशेन स्थितो जगत्. How is that exist?
That's what I said right in the beginning, right? That verse number 41 actually summarizes the entire chapter.
And the 42, that अथवा.
Oh, okay, 42.
That अथवा बहु नैतेन.
Yeah, he's saying basically, basically at the end he's kind of exhausted and he says, what does it matter, how many, I can go on and on and on. There's unlimited amount of manifestations, and how does it serve you to know all of this, right?
And I am beyond that, and I still beyond that I exist.
Beyond that I exist, correct. No, he's saying I exist supporting all of this. This is only a part of myself. The most important aspect is the last few words where he says, this whole world is only a part of myself. In the Purusha Suktam, is it the Purusha Suktam? It says that only, yes, Purusha Suktam. It says, the world is only 1/4 of me, 25% of me is this whole thing that is created. It's very similar to that. He says that only a part of me is this whole creation. It's symbolic. It doesn't mean it's 1/4 of him. You cannot say 1/4 of the spirit is the manifest. It's not like that. It's just symbolic. He just says that this is very small compared to the infinite supreme, the infinite consciousness. The manifest is a very small portion of that. It's nothing. It's very small. It's finite, right? So the finite is very small compared to the infinite. So all of this is supported only by a fraction of me, of the Supreme, he means. That's basically what he's saying, is that don't understand this as literal, what he says, 25% of me is supporting this entire creation. It doesn't mean literally 25%, because then that makes the Supreme still limited. It is symbolic so that a person understands that the Supreme is far, far more than the finite. Is that what you wanted to refer to?
That is right.
Yeah. And one thing, the word here that's used is Jagat, right? So you must know the meaning of Jagat, okay? Jagat, Jagat. So coming, Ja is coming, Ga, Gayati, going, and Ta remaining for a short time. So if you break it down in Sanskrit, Ja stands for the coming, Ga is for the going, and Ta Ta is short, the half ta, only for a short while. So basically, it is coming and going and staying only for a short while. That is the meaning of Jagat. That which only stays for a long time, or that is which is constantly changing, that is Jagat. And Jagat doesn't mean only the physical, okay? The Jagat means the physical, the mental, the emotional, the intellectual, all the seven loks, all the causal, the subtle, the physical. Everything is Jagat.
Oh, and the whole universe, so to say.
Whole of creation. Universe is only a physical aspect. So I'll say all of creation, all of Maya is Jagat.
Right.
It's very important to know the meanings of these Sanskrit words, And the beauty of Sanskrit is no matter how you arrange the words, the meaning of the verse will not change. Do you understand what I'm saying? So in
That I didn't get. Yeah.
okay, in Sanskrit, so like you say, na athava bhutena, blah blah blah, right? So whether you say athava bhutena or bhutena athava, the meaning will not change. In this verse, even if you change the position of all these words, the meaning of the verse will remain the same. That is one reason why actually Sanskrit poetry is so beautiful, because you can switch the arrangements of the words to make the poem without changing the meaning. So, I mean, actually, Sanskrit, we should have a whole class on Sanskrit. It's such a phenomenal language. But basically, the language, it's not of human origin, first of all. But the main important thing you must remember, how Sanatan Dharm's choice of language is so critical. I'll tell you why. Even though you change the arrangement of the words in a verse, you cannot screw up. You cannot misunderstand or take a different meaning of that verse. I'll tell you why. In other languages, and this is what has happened in other religions, if you the reasons why it is misinterpreted is because that verse can be interpreted in more than one way. Do you understand?
Yeah, I get.
Okay, so in other languages, whether it's English or Hebrew, I won't say Hebrew, but in English, in Arabic, in Greek, in Italian, whatever, or Latin even. If you take all the other classical languages, the order of the words will change the meaning. Stop, don't go. Now, if I say stop, don't go, does it mean stop, don't go? Or there's 2-3 ways of interpreting that. That was one of the examples I used to use. But anyway, what I'm saying is that same sentence, stop, don't go, or go, don't stop, or whatever. But you can interpret it in many ways. You understand what I'm saying?
Understand.
Yeah, but in Sanskrit you can't do that. There's only one and only one way of understanding it, even if you switch the order of the words. So that is why our scriptures cannot be misinterpreted. It is a very, very key point.
If only you want to do it.
No, that is there, but I'm saying that you cannot misinterpret, because Sanskrit is such a scientific language, you cannot misinterpret it.
Only the people do it by putting it in their own.
Correct. That is
spin,
there. That is there. But if you are here, when you look at the literal meaning and you look at how it's written, you cannot write it a second way.
True.
So that is a very important aspect of Sanskrit. We've gone totally off topic, but
No, in the same when we are talking on the same, particularly the Vibhuti Yoga, that's what it is.
anyway, we've included many other topics, but there's so many interesting aspects of Sanatan Dharma, and I just love, the way how things have been chosen to put it together, because you see, it's a very evolved source that it's coming from. It's not from a human mind. That's the number one thing. You see, the rishis anyway are operating from a cosmic mind. They're not functioning from a human mind. So these things are not something which are limited, or see, anything which can come from a human mind will have flaws, will have limitations, can be misinterpreted, can be malpracticed. How many times have you seen the Gita malpractice? See, you have Mahabharata going on, you have verses where Krishnji is saying, go fight, go kill. Is it not? Is it not so? He's saying go fight. How many times he's told Arjun, fight, fight, fight? Have those verses been misused? No. No, right?
Correct.
Why is that? When the message is coming from a supreme being, there is a difference. They are not misused, because the higher meaning is understood. The overarching meaning is understood. The overarching meaning, do your karma, do bhakti, do meditation, get the knowledge. Those virtues, they overshadow the literal words of go fight, go fight, go fight. So people don't misuse the go fight, because the overarching message is so powerful. You understand?
True.
Yeah. So that is why I say, because when the words come from a Satguru, when the words come from a Rishi, when the words come from a divine source, a supreme source, they are not misunderstood and malpracticed. Of course, human beings can do whatever they want. They can always misuse things. All right, enough talking.